For 30 years, half of Eastern Europe has tried to forget the other half of its century. The statues came down and the streets were renamed. The red stars were chiseled off the town halls. So why are the largest communist monuments on the continent still standing on the ridgelines, too enormous to move and too awkward to keep? 10 of them today. Stay through to number 1, Petrova Gora in Croatia. A 37-metre saucer once sheathed in mirror-bright steel, now stripped to its skeleton by scrap thieves, a broadcast mast bolted where the museum used to be. This does not start with the stripping and the dynamite. It starts in the forests, in the years after the war, when a country that no longer exists set out to build the future in concrete and steel. Number 10, Kozara in northern Bosnia. Drive up through the national park, and the trees open onto a clearing, where a single fluted cylinder of grey concrete stands 33 metres tall. It is ringed top to bottom with vertical grooves, and it looks for all the world like a drill bit left behind by something enormous. It went up in 1972, the work of the sculptor Dusan Zamonja, and 3,000 volunteers who came to build it by hand. It marks one of the cruelest chapters of the war here, the Kozara offensive of 1942, when German and Croatian fascist forces closed a ring around the partisans on this mountain. The fighters were the smaller problem. Behind them were tens of thousands of civilians, and when the ring closed, the killings and the deportations to the camps ran to a scale this region has never been able to put down. A curved wall behind the tower carries the names of 9,921 of the dead. The monument was built to make that number impossible to walk past. But a name on a wall only does its work if someone still comes to read it. And for years after Yugoslavia came apart, almost nobody did. Today, Kozara is cared for again. There's a small round museum sunk into the hillside, a fee to enter the park, the occasional coach of school children climbing the steps. Of everything on this list, it is one of the lucky ones. It kept both its shape and its meaning, which turns out to be rarer here than you would think, because most of the others lost one or the other. Number 9, the Makedonium, above the town of Kruševo in North Macedonia. Come over the hill, and you are looking at something that should not be there. A smooth white dome the size of a house, sprouting bulbous pods and oval windows of stained glass, sitting on a mountain like a spacecraft that landed in 1974 and was never asked to leave. That is exactly when it opened, the 2nd of August, 1974, designed by the sculptor Jordan Grabowski and his wife, the architect Iskra Grabowska. It honours 2 uprisings at once. The old one, in 1903, when the people of this town threw off Ottoman rule and declared a republic that lasted 10 days, and the newer one, the partisan struggle of the Second World War. Inside, under the coloured glass, lies the grave of the man who led that 10-day republic. The building became so central to how Macedonia sees itself that when the country broke away and printed its own money, it put this dome on the banknotes. So this one was loved. Therefore it survived, restored back in 2003, still the site of a national ceremony every August. And yet, the authorities have grown quietly uneasy with it, because for all its beauty, it is a Yugoslav thing. And Yugoslavia is a word modern governments would rather not dwell on. It is admired, printed on the currency, and faintly embarrassing to the state that owns it. That contradiction is the whole story of this list. Next, on to number 8, Kosmaj, just south of Belgrade in Serbia. Climb the winding road to the top, and 5 enormous concrete blades rise out of the forest, each one split at the tip, all of them leaning outward from a single point, like a star caught in the act of exploding. It was unveiled on the 2nd of July 1971 by the sculptor Vojin Stojic and the architect Gradimir Medakovic, and they called it the Spark of Freedom. It stands for the fighters of the Kosmaj partisan detachment, formed on this hill in 1941, who spent the whole war being scattered by the Germans and coming back. In the winter of 1942, near the village of Tules, 300 of them were surrounded in a single action, and only 13 walked out. Nearly 6,000 of them did not come back at all. On a clear night, before the city grew so bright, you could see it from Belgrade. But being visible is not the same as being protected. Serbia never registered Kosmaj as protected heritage. Therefore, the star has been left to weather on its own, the concrete streaked and cracking, the names of the dead sharing the stone now with spray paint. People still drive out here at the weekend. They picnic in its shadow, climb inside the blades, and mostly have no idea what they are standing under. It is one of the most striking objects in Serbia, and one of the least looked after. Nobody ever decided to abandon it. They simply stopped deciding anything about it at all. Number 7. The founders of the Bulgarian state, above the city of Shumen in Bulgaria. This one you can see from 30 kilometers away. A cliff of raw concrete, 140 meters long and 70 meters high, packed with cubist stone giants, kings and khans, glaring down over the plain. To reach it, you climb 1,300 steps, one for every year it commemorates. It was unveiled in November 1981, built by the communist government to mark 1,300 years since the founding of the Bulgarian state, back in the year 681. 50,000 cubic meters of concrete went into it. The granite lion on the top weighs 1,000 tons on its own. The leader who ordered it, Todor Zhivkov, is said to have compared himself to the ancient founder king carved into its walls. If you are enjoying these, subscribe, because there is a monument like this hidden in almost every corner of the old Eastern Bloc, and we are working through them. The strangest is still to come at number 1, but there are 6 more ridgelines to climb before we get there. So Shumen kept its place by keeping its head down, and here is the trick that saved it. It carries no red star, no hammer, no sickle. It celebrates khans and czars from 13 centuries ago, not the party that actually paid for it. Every other monument on this list wears its communism on its sleeve. This one buried it under ancient history. Therefore, when the regime fell, Bulgaria could keep loving the giants on the hill and quietly forget who commissioned them. It is beautifully kept, a favourite spot for wedding photographs. The concrete will crumble one day, and the arguments about what to do with it have already started. For now, the khans hold the line. Number 6. Kadinjaca, on a hilltop west of the town of Uzice in Serbia. A row of tall white concrete slabs stands along the ridge, undulating like a frozen wave, and the 2 tallest are pierced clean through near the top with a great ragged hole, as if someone fired a cannon straight through the stone. The hole is the point. That autumn, the town of Uzice had been the capital of a small free republic, 67 days of liberated ground in the middle of occupied Europe. In late November 1941, a workers' battalion of about 400 men held this ridge against a far larger German force, buying time for the town below to empty before the enemy broke through. Almost every one of them died where they stood, and the little republic died with them. A small pyramid marked the spot from 1952. Then, in 1979, the sculptor Miodrag Zivkovic and the architect Alexander Djokic wrapped the whole hilltop in these pale, screaming forms. Look closely, and you can see faces struggling out of the concrete. Now, most of the monuments on this list are either ruined, resented, or forgotten. Kadinjaca is none of those things. It is spotless. It is protected by the Serbian state as heritage of exceptional importance, free of graffiti, still visited, still tended. It survived because the story it tells of a few hundred workers dying to save their neighbours is one nobody in Serbia wants to argue with. Take away the politics and you are left with plain sacrifice, and plain sacrifice ages well. Keep that word in mind, sacrifice, because the next monument was built for it too, and it did not fare anything like as kindly. Number 5. Tjentiste, deep in the Tjentiste National Park in Bosnia. At the bottom of a green valley, two colossal concrete wings rear up out of the grass, 19 meters tall, split down the middle so that the whole thing frames the mountains behind it, like a gateway torn open by force. It marks the Battle of the Tjentiste in the early summer of 1943, when Tito and his surrounded army fought their way out of a German encirclement through this valley. More than 7,000 partisans died doing it. The sculptor was Miodrag Zivkovic again, and the wings went up in 1971. Down the slope, a memorial house was built, its walls covered in 13 huge frescoes of the battle. For a while, this was the most visited war memorial in the whole country. Hundreds of thousands came every year. There was a hotel, a campsite, an enormous open-air swimming pool. Then the 1990s arrived, and the valley that had once stood for a united Yugoslavia found itself inside a country tearing that unity apart. The memorial house was gutted. The frescoes were defaced. The underground amphitheatre rotted where it stood. The wings themselves have since been cleaned and whitewashed back to something near their old brilliance. But walk down to the memorial house, and the damage is still there under the restoration, a masterpiece that was left to be vandalised and is only now being coaxed back. It is half saved and half scarred, which in this part of the world counts as a happy ending. Number 4, Podgaric, in the gentle farm country of central Croatia. This is the one you have probably seen without knowing where it was. A vast, winged form of pale concrete, 10 meters tall and 20 across, with a single round eye at its center, clad in shining metal panels, spreading its wings against the sky like a bird made by an engineer. It was unveiled in September 1967 by the sculptor Dusan Zamonja, and Tito himself came to open it. He liked it so much, he kept a model of it at his residence in Zagreb. Zamonja called the shape the Wings of Victory, and had an artificial lake dug in the valley below just to double the thing in the water. Beneath the approach lie the graves of some 900 partisans who died in the hills around here. Unlike almost everything else on this list, Podgaric has not been stripped or blown up or defaced. It simply sits there, out in the fields, largely alone. The grand plans for gardens and resorts around it never happened. The visitors thinned. It endures, intact and quietly ignored. It seemed permanent when it went up. So did the last two Croatian monuments still to come on this list, both of them by the same sculptor, both of them clad in polished steel, both built to outlast every one of us. Only one of the pair is still standing, which brings us to what happens when a country decides it actively wants a monument gone. Number 3, Kamenska, in the emptied hills of Slavonia in eastern Croatia. There is nothing here now but a broad concrete base on a hilltop above an abandoned village, the road up to it swallowed by bushes for most of the last 30 years. But from 1968 until 1992, this base held a pair of soaring stainless steel wings, 30 meters tall, mirror bright, the largest abstract sculpture in Europe. It took more than a decade to build. 19 towns across the region paid for it out of public donations, and a shipbuilding engineer spent years working out how to keep 30 meters of steel standing in the wind. Tito opened it. Photographers came from across the continent to shoot it against the sky. Now remember the mirror-bright saucer I promised you at number 1. The man who made it, the sculptor Vojin Bakic, made this one first. And in February 1992, the army of newly independent Croatia came to Kamenska with dynamite. It did not go easily. It took 5 days and 9 separate attempts to bring the wings down. Afterwards, the official line was that the wind had toppled it, until the National Weather Service published its own records and quietly demolished that story too. The steel, so people in the villages say, was carted off and melted into cutlery. Bakic was a Croatian sculptor of Serb origin, and in the new Croatia, his monuments to Serb and partisan resistance had become the wrong monuments to the wrong people. So they were mined, one after another, and this was the largest of them. He died the same year they blew it up. And his masterpiece survives now only as a projection, an image thrown onto a tall LED wall on the empty hilltop in 2023 by artists who wanted the ground to remember what it lost. Number 2, Korcanica, hidden deep inside the Gora forest in western Bosnia. To find this one, you leave the road and walk into the trees, and eventually the forest opens, and a strange curved shell of concrete rises in front of you, ribbed like the inside of a fan, a wide circular basin of still water reflecting it from below. There is a reason it is buried out here. During the war, these slopes hid a secret partisan hospital, 19 buildings under the canopy, a bakery, workshops, even its own power station, treating some 2,800 wounded and fever-struck fighters where the enemy could not reach them. The monument, built in 1979 by the sculptor Ljubomir Denkovic, was meant to mark that hidden place and keep it from being forgotten. But the Gora forest sat on the front line of the Bosnian War of the 1990s, and the memorial to the hospital was wrecked along with everything else. Nobody holds ceremonies here now. It is not protected as heritage. It sits in the woods, cracking apart, sinking slowly back into the green. A short walk away stands the burnt-out shell of a mountain hotel, built in the same hopeful years to bring visitors up to this spot. Nobody came for the visitors either. A monument to a place that was hidden on purpose, now hidden all over again, this time by neglect. Of everything on this list, it is the one you are least likely to ever stand in front of. Number 1. Petrova Gora, on a wooded ridge in the Kordun region of central Croatia. Come up the last stretch of road, and it is there through the trees, 37 meters of curving, twisting form, catching the light in patches where the metal skin remains, and going dull grey where it does not. Half of it shines, half of it is bare bone. It was the work of Vojin Bakic, the same man who built the wings at Kamenska, and it took a full decade to finish. The first design competition, back in 1970, produced a winner so complex and costly that it had to be abandoned, and Bakic, who had come second, was handed the job on the second attempt. It opened in October 1981, a great sculptural tower sheathed in mirror-bright stainless steel, designed so its skin would reflect the forest and almost dissolve into it. Inside it was a museum on 7 levels, with the names of more than 30,000 fallen fighters and murdered civilians cut into the walls. It stood for the uprising of the Serb and partisan population of this region against the fascist Croatian state during the war, and for the secret hospital that once hid in these same hills. Then came 1991 and the war, and everything turned. The ridge changed hands. The museum was gutted, And because the monument honoured Serb resistance, in the new Croatia there was simply no one left with any reason to protect it, so it was left to the locals. And the locals looked at 40 tons of gleaming stainless steel sitting unguarded on a mountain, and they saw building material. Year after year, the panels came off. The mirror skin that was meant to make it shimmer for centuries was carried away a sheet at a time, sold for scrap, until more than half of it was gone, and the concrete skeleton stood exposed to the weather, insulation spilling from the wounds. Someone bolted a broadcast mast on top without a permit, because a ruin on a summit is still a useful place to hang an aerial. The main door is padlocked now, with a handwritten sign warning that it is dangerous to go inside, and another telling you the key is kept at the council office down in Vojnić. Restoration has been promised more than once, written into agreements between political parties, announced and then quietly dropped. Nothing has come of any of it. Barkic built 2 colossal mirrors to the same war. One was dynamited in an afternoon. The other is being taken to pieces slowly, panel by panel, by the descendants of the people it was built to honour. It was made to outlast every one of us, a silver beacon that would still be catching the sun long after the last witness was gone. It is barely holding itself up. There are monuments in Europe you cannot visit because they are sacred. There are monuments you cannot visit because they are dangerous. And there are monuments you cannot visit because there is no one left who wants to unlock the door. 10 of them today, built by a country that promised these things would outlast us all, and inherited by countries that could not decide whether to save them, sell them, or bury them in the trees. That promise is still legible if you know where to look. It is cut into the walls of Petrova Gora, under a roof that is letting in the rain. Subscribe, and we will go and find the next 10 together. Thank you.